Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Odious Soul. My name is Shannon, and in this video we are going to be transplanting aloe plants and carnivorous plants into new soil. So historically, I have been terrible with trying to figure out what actually is good for aloe vera plants to grow in. I have a ton of aloe plants and some of them really struggle. And the reason is you can't use a normal potting soil for succulents such as aloe because those succulent plants need well-drained soil that when you go to water it, the water is going to kind of go right through it. And typically I just use whatever I have around the house. So my husband decided that since I have a new addiction to gardening, he was gonna buy me some plants. So what kind of plants did he buy me? Well, he bought me carnivorous plants. He bought me a Venus flytrap named Jaws. And then he also bought me a sundew, which I couldn't even tell you what kind of sundew it is without looking at the tag. Insert tag here. So since we just got these within the past 2 weeks, I need to transplant them to bigger, better containers, something that they can grow in and I won't have to worry about them for a little while. So I had to do research, of course, to find out what to do, and surprisingly, carnivorous plants and succulent plants require very similar soil. The only difference is with the succulents, you only water them when the soil is completely dry, and you can forget to water them for a month and they'll probably still survive. Whereas the carnivorous plants, they actually live out in nature in real life in bog type areas. Now, what is a bog? Well, the Venus flytrap, for example, is actually an endangered species in North Carolina and South Carolina. Yes, Venus flytraps actually grow out in nature in North Carolina and South Carolina in the United States, which is like 7 hours from me. If you would have told me that there are man-eating plants 7 hours from me, I would be like, what? But that's not true because they don't grow big enough to be man-eating plants. They're bug-eating plants. But still, it just blows my mind that they are actually real in real life in something so close to me. So it's just crazy. So a bog is an area that's very moist, very wet, very much kind of like a swamp, only it's usually like a bigger open field. It doesn't get a lot of nutrients. Usually it's spring fed and there's usually no trees. So imagine like a big open field that's smushy, mushy, and wet constantly. And that's where they live. There's not a lot of things like dying, like trees dying and decomposing. That's why a bog doesn't have a lot of nutrients. So they need what they need to survive is something that is lacking nutrients, kind of like a peat moss, which I got a big old bag over here, which was actually on sale at Walmart for like $3.50 a bag. Normally these bags are like $10 a pop, and they're actually really good at starting seeds, like for germinating seeds and stuff. So I bought as many bags as I could fit in my car. So I have a ton of this out in the garage. I will be using this also probably in my beds, my raised beds, just to kind of help break up the soil and allow better drainage when I add in compost before the spring season. But anyway, back to the soil that the carnivorous and the succulent plants need. We got the peat moss, also got perlite to mix in with it. Perlite kind of helps break up everything and helps allow for better drainage, but at the same time it allows, it holds on to the water, retains the moisture, so it's still in there for them to get a hold of. And then I also have sand. This is actually some desert sand. It's this is a decorative soil cover, but this is actually made specifically to also be used with pots. I bought this at my local gardening store, Bowman's. They had this is what they recommended for the carnivorous and succulent plants. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to take 4 cups of the peat moss. I'm gonna put it in my bucket. Then I'm gonna take 1 cup of the perlite, put it in the same bucket. And then I'm gonna take 1 cup of the sand and put it in the same bucket, and I'm gonna mix it all up. So give me a second. All right, so before we move on, a couple quick notes about the soil mixture. So first off, if you are using wet peat moss, technically you only need to have 1-to-1 ratio with the perlite and the sand. The reason why I used 4 cups to 1 cup of perlite and 1 cup of sand is because I was using a dry mixture of of peat moss. So with the peat moss, you can make it wet, and if so, it's going to compact more. So just kind of keep that in mind depending on what kind of peat moss you're working with. If your brand that you get is kind of shady, you might want to rinse it and wash it first. So if you do that, you're probably going to have wet peat, and then you're looking at for a 1-to-1 ratio with what you're cutting it with. Sounds like we're cutting drugs, but what you're cutting the peat moss with, to make it more, give it more aeration. So I did not do that with my peat moss. It's dry, that's why I used 4 cups of the peat moss to 1 of perlite and 1 of sand. And you don't need both the perlite and the sand. Some areas where these things grow naturally are a little bit more sandy, so the plant may appreciate having the sand. I just did it just because my first time I'm gonna try it with both and see how it goes. So another thing to mention too is with perlite, the dust from perlite is very toxic for us to breathe in. So if you're using perlite, you can pre-wash it, and you can wear a respirator when you're working with it. I only had 1 cup, and the brand that I got actually says that it is pre-washed and free from excess dust, so I didn't bother with that. But just kind of as a precaution, sometimes, you know, do as I say do, don't do as I do. Just want to make sure everybody's safe when they're messing with it. So because peat is so much when it is not wet, before I plant my plants, I am going to pour water into this mixture, so that way when I go to put this into my container, I have a realistic expectation of how much I'm actually putting in my container. It will compress and compact with water. So the big thing with carnivorous plants is you do not want to use tap water. You want to use distilled water. So carnivorous plants can't handle excess salt whatsoever. It'll kill them. So, and you have to be careful with excess minerals and other things too. So just to be safe, you know, go to Walmart, buy some cheap bottles of distilled water. If you want to distill your own water, great. If you have that capability, go ahead. I know a company up in, I think it's Oregon, who sells carnivorous plants. They do, you know, a reverse osmosis unit to water their plants. If you can afford one of those, go ahead if you're doing it on a big scale. I was going to use this gallon. I'm just going to pour it in a little bit at a time. Spin it around. You see I didn't even use half of that, maybe a quarter of that gallon. I'm just going to work this into the soil here. And you can see that's still pretty dry. I mean, so I'm going to pour some more in here. Probably just the same amount, another quarter of that gallon. definitely starting to feel a little bit boggy in here. And that actually seems really good. I got some water on the bottom that I can still bring up. It's definitely getting a little bit more of a, I don't want to say muddy, but has a pretty good consistency there. Also, if you notice in here too, we have like little sticks. You can remove this. This is like straw that came from the peat moss. Good peat moss will not have this. You can also get pre-sifted peat moss. If you want to, you can actually pre-sift your own peat moss so you don't have those kind of things. Obviously, I did not do that this time. So if you see that stuff, you can just pull it out. It's not a huge deal. All right, let's get planting. All right, so I have decided to actually plant both of my carnivorous plants in the same container. It's so dirty on the outside, don't judge. So I have my little Jaws, which he is so super cute. He is gonna go in one side, and then I have my Sundew. I'm gonna have him on the other side. And if you notice, like I had them sitting in water, both of these, because they need that bog-like condition. Typically what I've been doing is the Sundew likes to sit in at least an inch of water. So I keep that. And then with the Venus flytrap, the Jaws, I actually water him daily, and then whatever excess falls out, he gets to sit in his tray. And then actually I just use this water to water other plants in my room. So I take out the nasty water every day, or the used water, feed other plants with it, and then I pour fresh distilled water over top of him, just a little bit, as you can tell. So I'm gonna put my gloves on for this because I don't want to get too dirty. Just a little dirt is always good. And I'm gonna start off by just scooping this mixture in here. And now I'm going to make the holes, and I'm just going to take this entire thing out and just stick it right in the hole. I'm not going to try to separate the roots from the dirt that it's existing. I'm just going to, you know, take it all the way out and put it right in. So I'm so nervous, I don't want to hurt it. You know, I've seen like people in videos handle these, and you know, they don't look like they're too fragile, but I know that they are somewhat fragile. So I'm just like, oh, come on, little baby, let me help you along. All right, and you can see there's a lot of perlite in the mixture that it's been growing in. So take this, stick this over here, take some from my little bucket, fill in around the edges. And then try not to damage any of the leaves in the process. All right, now I'm gonna dig my other hole, and woo, just got water all over my leg. Slide this out. To the bottom here, put that in there. And then I'm going to just put him right there on top. All right, and there we go. So we have this little guy over here. Still got some dirt on some of his leaves, but not too bad. So now he's got room to grow, and then I have this cute little Sundew over here, and he's got room to grow. And hopefully one day they get so big that I have to separate them again. But anyway, going to put this in a reservoir so it can have an inch of water the entire time to sit in and stay nice and moist and wet. So thank you guys for watching, and until next time, let's get growing.